Welcome to another episode of Quest for Twice. Today is December 30th, so this will be the last episode of 2024. Today I'm going to cover earning updates from several companies in my portfolio. The first one is MarineMax. So MarineMax had the fiscal fourth quarter ending at September of this year. Its fourth quarter revenue was down 5% year-on-year, with 5% same store sales decline. A new boat sale was down 6%. The overall gross margin was 34.3%, same as 1 year ago. So those numbers need to be put into context with another boat dealer that's called One Water, which is smaller than MarineMax. Its fourth quarter revenue was down 16%, with same-store sales down 17%, significantly worse than MarineMax. And new boats margin was 16.3% compared to 18% before the pandemic. And used boats margin was 19.2% compared to 16% before the pandemic. The overall margin of 24% was 10 percentage points less than MarineMax. That's because MarineMax have a more higher margin business. So we can see in the figure on the right, it shows the sales makeup of a MarineMax for each quarter. So the bottom three bars were from new boats, used boats, and broker dealer sales. In the fourth quarter, their total percentage was less than the third and the second quarter of this fiscal year. So because of this different sales mix, the quarterly gross margin was higher than the gross margins in the previous 2 quarters. Overall, it's important to note that MarineMax has its gross margin pretty safely above 30% since the pandemic. Looks like it will be able to keep the margin above 30% compared to just over 25% in 2017, 2018, and 2019. So let's look at the different sales segments in the most recent quarters. The storage and the charter business grew 9% year-on-year, as shown in the figure on the top right. Finance and insurance, which has 100% margin according to One Water, was up 28% year-on-year. In terms of profitability, we can see in the figure on the bottom right, the floor plan interest has been higher because of the higher interest rate environment, and as well as a much larger inventory because during the pandemic, the MarineMax inventory was almost zero because the demand was so great that the dealer couldn't keep any inventory and it just gets sold immediately. The interesting part is the next year's guidance. Important thing is the management mentioned that there will be only limited hurricane impact from the 2 major hurricanes in September and October because of the insurance coverage on its business. Management gave a guidance of $150 to $180 million EBITDA range compared to $160 in this year that including $24 million of stock compensation. So the management is basically saying next year the business will be similar as this year. Now let's look at Borg Warner. As shown in the figure on the top right, its third quarter sales was down 5% from 1 year ago due to overall market softness. This figure also shows the segment revenue, with most of the sales came from turbo and thermal, as well as drivetrain and motor system. The two smaller segments are the power drive and the e-propulsion, as well as battery and charging. The management mentioned the company planned a e-propulsion R&D reduction for about $100 million per year going forward. This is because of the general pullback of the car manufacturers from EV production. So Borg Warner is adjusting its R&D investment accordingly. So for the full year, the guidance for e-product sales will be about $2.4 billion compared to $2 billion in last year. The management reaffirmed this year's free cash flow around $525 million, despite the sales pullback because of the cost reduction. $400 million of the free cash flow will be allocated for share buybacks. So the company is still generating a lot of free cash. Now let's look at the Aqua. This year, my portfolio is underperforming S&P 500 by a wide margin. The number one issue is Aqua. So let's look at what's going on with Aqua. This figure with the yellow bars shows the quarterly cost of goods sold. So we can see that between first quarter 2016 and first quarter 2021, its cost of goods sold generally stays fairly stable around $300 million per quarter. Then, after third quarter of 21, this cost of goods sold stabilized around $500 million per quarter. This significant increase was due to the significant acquisition from Aqua of especially it built its HDPE product line through acquisitions. The two lines on the top are the revenue, which is the solid line, and the gross margin, which is the dashed line. So you can see the gross margin was around 24% before third quarter 2020, then jumped up during the pandemic. Afterwards, it started a decline almost every quarter since third quarter 22, and reached about 28% in the fiscal quarter of 2024, which ended on September 30th of 2024. The quarterly revenue trend follows the gross margin trend. So the key revelation here is that the gross profit is largely dependent on price, since the COGS are generally constant. In the fiscal year 2022, the profit was very high because the price was very high, with only small increase in the cost of goods sold. At the end of fiscal 2022, the management provided a graph that's shown on the top right. Shows that in 2022, the $1.34 billion of EBITDA has two larger components. One is a $757 million that's in gray, and $585 million that's in green. The management message back then was the $585 million was due to price outperformance and was expected to dissipate once the price normalized. However, management also mentioned on the part with the letter C that the $400 million of estimated sustainable price improvement that adds to the 2017 EBITDA of $228 million, as well as incremental EBITDA from M&A of $229 million. That's how we get the gray bar of $757 million as a sustainable EBITDA going forward. Now, after 2 years, I can say with confidence that the CEO's statement in the 2022 was mistaken. In 2023, the price cost reduction was $256 million, and 2024 was $358 million. That adds up to over $600 million already, exceeding the $585 million price outperformance, the part D in that figure. Importantly, the management gave a first quarter 25 EBITDA guidance of $100 million, implies a gross margin of only 26%. So it looks like the gross margin will reach the pre-pandemic level in the current fiscal quarter. There is no sustainable pricing improvements. Now let's look at the fiscal 2025 guidance of EBITDA of $500 million, comparing to $772 and $1.024 billion in the previous 2 fiscal years. The guidance of $500 million was a significant reduction from prior guidance of at least $650 million given in August of 2024. So the EBITDA and the price cost reduction will suffer a further $295 million in fiscal 25. So putting all those numbers into my model, seems that the management implied a 15% return on invested capital in 2025 before tax, with a 28% gross margin. So we can look at the figure on the top left to put this into context. The red line is the revenue since 2016. The dashed blue line is the gross margin. We can see that it peaked in 2022 over 40%, then will decline to about 28% in fiscal 2025. Given the management has lowered its guidance for fiscal 24 and fiscal 25 several times in this year, one has to wonder if their latest guidance is realistic. So we can make a judgment using the dash dot brown line shown in this figure. As I mentioned earlier, the management guidance implies about 15% return on invested capital before tax. That's kind of a consistent with the return on invested capital before the pandemic. So the takeaway is Aqua out-earned comparing to its historical return on invested capital during 2021 through 2024. Then from 2025 and going forward, its return profile should be similar as the profile before the pandemic. Hence, I think there is a very good chance that the management will finally be able to hold its guidance and deliver in fiscal 25. But of course, we'll have to wait and see the actual numbers. Finally, just a note about the cash flow situation as shown in the figure on the top right. Last fiscal year, Aqua generated $550 million of cash from operations, spent $150 million on capital expenditures, and $380 million on stock buybacks. So Aqua has a fairly strong cash generating capability, which will help its stock price going forward. Finally, let's look at the industry trend. So the figure on the left is from Wesco. We can see since a peak in 2021, its growth has been sputtering and actually had a decline in 2023 and 2024 before a recent rebound in the latest third quarter. The figure on the right shows the custom truck one solution equipment rental statistics. So the rental utilization was 73% in third quarter after reaching a low of 71.7% in second quarter. We can see the rental utilization peaked in the fourth quarter of 2022 and declined continuously for about 7 quarters. So the utility segment may have reached its trough and hopefully started to rebound. Another important information is the Westlake Chemical Company plans to build a PVC pipe plant starting in fourth quarter of this year. So that enters a direct competition with Aqua's PVC product line. And that's another reason why Aqua's gross margin will normalize and return on invested capital will normalize in next year because of more competition. As I mentioned earlier, its profitability is very sensitive to price. Hence, the increased supply with the still tepid demand will cause a price softness and impact the profitability profile of Aqua. Lastly, Hubble also gave some information. The management believed it'll return to growth in its distribution business next year with a solid end market demand. The telecommunication market is still very weak in the third quarter, down 30% from 1 year ago. That's where Aqua's HDPE product line will be used in the most case. So that's still weak. that's another reason of price softness for equity. This concludes the last episode of Quest for Twice in 2024. Until next year, happy investing.